God bless you and welcome to another time to the Brinson Institute. We're just excited about what God is doing in the land, and thank you again for all of you that tune in every Wednesday at this hour, Central Standard Time, every Wednesday from 2 to 3 to join us as we continue to share the Word of God. I'm excited about what God is doing and how He continues to bless. We'd like to thank all of you that have continuously to make contact with us and to call in. Thank you for those of you that continue your support. We'd like to thank you and remind you if you would like to continue to support our ministry, you can go on our website, www.thebrinsoninstitute.com. Go to our donation page and give through PayPal. I take time out to go to our website and just look at it, browse through it, and this will give you an idea of what we do, what our ministry entails, and some of our ministries and programs. And if you decide to be a part and participate on an ongoing basis, do so. We invite you to do that and participate in our roundtables and our breakfasts and our workshops and our seminars. And any of you that want to have Apostle Brinson to come to your ministry or do a workshop or a seminar, we'll make ourselves available. Those of you that are listening, I ask you a question. If you would just share now, hit your share button and make contact with some of your people. That helps us extend our listening and viewing audience today. Just hit the share button, and we thank you. Also, we like to say that God is continuing. We are still in the book of Elijah. We are still in the book of Elijah. We're winding down. We started with 1 Kings chapter 17. Those of you that have been monitoring us and have been watching us, we've had a couple of breaks with others coming in and sharing, but we endeavored to do a personality character assessment of a person in the Bible. One of the things that is interested in me in Bible study is we have all kind of issues relating to the biblical text, from who wrote the Bible to the translations of the Bible. But I wanted to get some of you Bible students to take a deeper look within the Bible. Those of you that have really not taken a look at the Bible, to take a look and let's look at some of the characters in the Bible and see what takeaway lessons that we can get out of their relationship with God, their relationship with people and situations and circumstances. What did the text say? Who were the characters in the story? What kinds of things took place in those stories? What was God saying? And what was the attitude? What were the surroundings? And what was going to happen and going on in the story, so we can better get a handle on how that person thought, what was in their mind, get a sense of their soul, their spirit, and their heart, and then also the relationship with their people. And at the same time, as you study, you'll be able to segue as you get to learn to study your text and get a good study Bible. It's going to take you to connect you to other things and other situations and circumstances that are sort of related to the character that you probably didn't know. Wow, the riches of the text. God has blessed us. We've been in ministry, some more than 51 years. I'm 67. We'll be 68 in September the 30th, but I've been in church and born and raised in church all my life. So from a little child, 6 years old, gave our hearts to the Lord at 6, and somebody said, well, Brinson, how long you been in ministry? Working in the Sunday school and working the afternoon Sunday school, being trained in Sunday school and vacation Bible school, and had a mother that read the word and a father that did family altar. And then on Sunday, we was in church, morning service. Sometimes we stayed Sunday school, morning service. Sometimes we stayed for afternoon Sunday school, yes. And then 6 o'clock, BGMC, other people call it BTU or YPW, then 7 o'clock, then Wednesday night prayer and Bible study, Friday night prayer and Terry service, and then some Saturdays and different programs. So when you grow up in a house and you have to read the scriptures every day, 3 times a day, and pray, when you grow up like that, you become familiar And some of you all been in church, you've heard stories, you've heard texts, and some things you begin as you grow old and study, you find out that the Bible didn't say this and this. This is what the people said. You find that out. And you find out, well, a testimony, prayer is the key and faith unlocks any door. If you make one step, he'll make two. That is an experience. That is a storyline. That is a testimony of people as they engage God, but it's not written in the Bible. So some people are still looking at, if you make one step, he'll make two. What book is that in? What book? No, it's a principle. It's a principle. So we gather our principles, some of our traditions, some of our reasoning, and our experience. All of that helps us to understand God, but we have to bring it back to the text. So I would encourage you, as you get your Bibles out and start really again studying the text, you're going to begin to see a new light in the text. You're going to be able to understand and see things from another vantage point. Now, some of you all are matured. Now you're stronger in the Word of God. You're matured and grown in your studies. And so now, as you go back to the Bible and read the text, you bring to it a different lens, and you can see more revelations, and you've been able to understand the mysteries of the text. And so that's very exciting. That's very exciting. So let's continue this journey, because I'm excited, because I see things and new things in the text that, you grow up in church and you hear the preacher, and we preach different sermons and tell different stories from our vantage point. And then after all of that, you can go back to that same text and read and say, aha, there's some other things I see in this that I didn't see before. So that's where we are. And that's why we have taken our time. And as one of my good sisters says, walking through the text. We're going to walk through the text as we continue to walk through and interpret the text, and then see how the text challenge us for everyday living in our lifestyles, and what are the principles and takeaways that we glean from the text. So in 1 Kings, we're now at a place in the story of 1 Kings chapter 18, where Elijah meets Ahab. And now we talked about that in our last lesson series. And so now Elijah says to Ahab, all right, it's come down to the time where we got to choose who we're going to worship. We're going to choose who we're going to worship. So I need you to go get Israel. You're the king of Israel. The kingdom had been split between Judah and Israel now. And we talked about Ahab and what has happened with the Lord's prophets in our last series. And so now Elijah says to Ahab, call all Israel together, get all the prophets of Baal. Verse 19, and all of Israel came unto Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal 450, and the prophets of the groves 400, which ate at Jezebel's table. The groves were the small areas where people went and worshiped and did their little rituals. We would call it our little churches here and there. So the 450 prophets of the grove were on the payroll of Jezebel. So they got paid and they ate all for Jezebel, because they were part of Jezebel's prophets and her extension satellite ministries. 450 satellite ministers who were on payroll, along with 400 prophets that was teaching and training in the ways of Baal. So that's 850 people, participants in Israel, spread all over Israel, teaching the whole cult and way of Baal. Isn't that something? We have people in our daily life now, people who are ministers and preachers and priests and imams, or bishops, apostles, evangelists, teachers, whatever you call them. And we have a variety of people who are teaching and preaching and sharing and training. The question is, are they doing it from the biblical text? Or are they mixing it in what they see and how they see it? Or are they setting up the process because it's legitimate, because man is basically religious and there's a religious question on the table? Where did I come from? How do I live? How do I function? Who take care of my needs? And why I exist? And so the whole Baal cult and culture was about the fertility God, the God who brings rain so that our vegetables and our fruits can grow, because we have to eat. So, I see this theme, this whole Baal theme throughout the whole text. Something about food, eating, and drinking is all through this text. So we're going to pick some more up a little later. So here, Ahab he talks about it. So now we're finding out there are 450 prophets which ate at Jezebel's table. Isn't that something? Here we go with eating again. So now the people are gathered. Elijah talks to the people first. He gathers all these people. Can you imagine all these people? And now he's there. He's been at the brook, Cherith. He's been at Zarephath. He's been at his 85 miles traveling between Cherith and Zarephath, 85 miles. He was 25 miles away from Ahab, hiding and living outdoors, and Ahab was looking for him, couldn't find him. Right up under his nose, living outside. Then God said, leave Cherith from living outside and dwelling outside in the caves, because back in those days, certain people, they were outdoorsmen. They could live and function in the caves, and they were wanderers. They were nomads. They lived outside. They wasn't inside with a nice shower and a jacuzzi. As a man of God, he knew how to live outside as well. So he lived outside for a while to brook Cherith. Then he goes and moves into the city to Zarephath. And now he has a loft in the house. And now he's back out now. He's back outdoors now. Now he's picked up along the way a servant, according to the text. And Elijah came and said unto the people, how long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word. Isn't it something that you as a man or woman of God can give a challenge to people who have in their history God doing things for them, God answering prayer, God opened up the Red Sea, God feeding them in the wilderness, God taking care of them. They have a history. If they look at their history, the history of their people is bequeathed with a variety of God active down through their years, active, but yet at the same time, things have come up and situations have found themselves falling away from their God, and yet their God still comes back, walks with them, heals them, forgives them, and bring them up. And this constant going back and forth, and to the point now, even though you can think about in your mind and sing the song that one of our preachers sang all the time, it is no secret what God can do. What he's done for others, he'll do for you. With arms wide open, he'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do. All of that, all of the things that we talk about God being good to me. God's been good to me. And in the midst of all of that, I'm sure that the children of Israel standing at Mount Carmel, there was some folk in that crowd that had a story. They had a story that they knew God. They had a story that they experienced God. There's always a group of people with a story in the midst of other people, but sometimes the story is muted. The story is shut down. There is no story. So here Ahab appeals to the people of Israel and to the prophets of Baal, 850, and along with the king, and the people answers not a word. They have no response. What do you do? How can you imagine Elijah got all these people gathered together, challenging them with the prophets of Baal and the prophets of the groves and Ahab and his people and his leaders, and everybody's gathered of the who's who? He makes a statement about the God of Israel, the God of the Hebrews, and says it's time for us to make a decision of who we gonna serve. And the folk in the crowd ain't got nothing to say. Nothing to say. Nothing to say. All right, so that's where we are at this point. They answered him not a word. Then Elijah said unto the people, I only remain a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. So now, we can kind of look at that. Maybe Elijah now is maybe getting a little big here. Now the crowd is out there. So now Elijah is setting history. So you got to really be careful when God puts you in a position of influence and puts you in a position that sometimes we take the leeway to rewrite the history. We want to rewrite certain people out of certain people's lives and change the definitions of things when a lot of people is around. So here Elijah, he's setting up and rewriting history. He's saying he's the only prophet. Or he might be saying he's the only active prophet. He's the only prophet left. Why would you make a statement like that? Well, Baal's prophets are 450. We're not talking about the people that eat at her table that's high by her. We're talking about her prophets. There are 450 Baal's prophets in Israel. And he takes the opinion that he remains the only one left of the Lord. Well, sometimes it's in our vantage point how we see things that we feel we're the only one. And God has to remind us, no, you're not the only one. You're not the only one. And then we say it to different people until we finally bring it into God's face, and then God has something else to say about it. We'll see that later in the text. But here, in front of all of Israel, in front of the 450 prophets and the prophets of the grove. So Ahab is sitting there, and so Elijah makes a distinction. Elijah makes a distinction. He says, okay, I'll give you 450 prophets, whatever they prophets or false prophets or prophets. But the other 400, they eat at Jezebel's table. They ain't no prophet. They may be ministers, but no, they were prophets because they were prophets of the groves. So he says, I'm the only one. I'm the only one. I'm the only one. I'm the one. Then, so he said, okay, so I'll tell you what. Let's lay this down. I want 450 prophets. Those are the higher group. There's 850 here. There are 450 prophets of the groves, but there are 400 prophets of Jezebel. So I want to take the higher level of prophets, the hierarchy, and I want you all to put together an altar. I want you to worship the altar, and I want you to call on your God Baal to do what Baal do. He was the fertility god, the god of rain. So I tell you what, you go first. The God that can produce the rain will be the God that we serve. Now, Elijah was smiling to himself because according to who he was and what he did, it was God, that the God that he served, that honored his protection and then honored him by protecting, but honored him by him walking in to the palace of Ahab and saying, look, let me tell you something. There will be no dew nor rain until I say so. God had to honor that as a man of God. God honored, there will be no dew or rain till I say so. Because what Elijah was trying to do was to neutralize the Baal god, because those who worship Baal know that he was a fertility cult, and the Baal god was responsible for the rain. So when the rain came, and it came down in its seasons, it watered the earth, it brought forth bud, the trees was able to thrive in the grass, and the animals could eat the grass and grow, and also you had fruits and vegetables, and the whole food chain was activated by the rain and the dew. Elijah said, you know what? You all have the nerve enough to say that Baal is the one that did that. That Baal is the one that took it. God put you, children of Israel, in the land flowing with milk and honey, and he gave you this land, and now you would say that Baal, another god, is the one that is responsible of growing the land and taking care of what God gave you. Ooh, isn't that something? That's a principle today, isn't it? How we sometime will know what God's doing, know what God is saying, see ourselves and see God working, and because of situations and circumstances, we begin to doubt God, and we'll come up with other avenues and say we did or somebody else did and fix stuff for us and forget all about God being a part of our equation. Could have been that the children of Israel was at that point, given all the things they had gone through, with the prophets being killed and all that, everybody's just doing their own thing, but there's a variety of people living that comes from different ways. Remember, you're not the only one left. But Elijah makes that statement, I'm the only one that is left. I'm the only prophet of the Lord that is left. So, they set up the process, and Elijah said, you go first. And so as you read the story, You know the story. They call from day to evening, day to all day afternoon. Baal, he'll ascend the fire. There was no fire. So finally, what happens? Elijah says, it's my turn. He sets up the altar according to the priestly directives of how an altar is supposed to be constructed. He waited to the evening time when the prayers and the times of the prayers were supposed to be prayed, and he went to produce the process, and the fire fell and consumed the altar. Now, so now after we see that, Elijah now, oh wow, I'm sure there's an explosion in the camp. When God shows himself up in a new dimension, people go to jumping. They want to go where the anointing is falling. They want to be with the person who they feel got away with God. So away with God, they know God. They know God. So here we go. The people said, oh wow. And it came to pass that the fire fell, and Elijah said unto them, and when all the people, verse 39, 1 Kings 18, verse 39, and when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they said, the Lord, he is the God. The Lord, he is the God. Note the people. They didn't say the Lord, he is our God. I guess, sometimes people can say, I believe in God. But the question is the God you believe in your God? Or you just believe that he exists and he is a God? So that's where they were. The Lord, he is the God. And Elijah said unto them, take the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape. And they took them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and killed them there. Now here's the brook again. There's another brook. From the brook Cherith, which means to cut away, to cut out, to cut off. The brook, to cut off. So God sends him to another brook to cut out, to cut away. In the season, brooks also run in seasons. During this season, I need you to cut off and cut away all the prophets of Baal. Elijah told Ahab, get thee up, eat and drink, for there is a sound of abundance of rain. It's okay, Ahab, the rain getting ready to come. I got to do what I got to do, but you need to get ready because there is going to be some rain. Then it hadn't rained and no dew for 3.5 years, but because God has showed up, and because we've gone through some issues, God has showed up now. I'm sure Elijah, from our standpoint, was matured. I mean, he went from the brook Zarephath of being out and there, and the ravens feeding him, and drinking from the brook, and he goes to Zarephath from Cherith, and he finds and see God's there. He blesses the widow woman, puts her in business. She puts him up in the house, and he stays there in the city for some season of time. The Zarephath, the widow of Zarephath's son dies, and he resurrects the son. And after a while, God said, I need you to go back home and talk. Not go back home, but go back and find Elijah. Elijah, go back and find Ahab. Tell him the rain is getting ready to come. So that's what he's done. So now, he says, and Elijah went up to the top of Mount Carmel and cast himself down upon the earth and put his face between his knees. And he said to his servant, go up now, look toward the sea. And he went up and looked and said, there is nothing. And he said, go again. And he ended up going 7 times. Now Elijah is reminding God that I am your prophet and I'm the man of God. And based upon me being your prophet and the man of God, I made a statement. And my statement was to Elijah, there would be no dew or no rain until I say so. Because I was concerned about where he was taking Israel and worship with Baal, especially with Jezebel he taken in, and all them worshiping Baal as if he was going to bring the rain. So I wanted to make sure that what Baal represented, one of the main things Baal represented as a god of futility was the rain god. So I want to mess that part up. But I'm also trusting you now that it's time for me to give a signal to release what I shut up and let it go. Now, you know, it's sort of interesting of what Elijah is doing. Jesus says that whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So on the earth, Elijah, this was way pre-Jesus, the principle was already in the earth. Elijah bound up the rain. God said, bind up. Elijah says, it's time for me to talk to you now. I need you to loose the reins. And so he is in the prayer mode of talking to God, that God will release what he said, and through the prophetic move, that there would be no dew nor rain until he spoke it. So now he's back, he spoke it, and so now God, it's time for you to send the rain. Came to pass at the seventh time that he said, the servants said, behold, there arises a little cloud out of the sea like a man's hand. A little cloud. Sometimes God will send you just a little cloud that will grow bigger, but it has to start somewhere. A little cloud about the size of a man's hand. And he said, go up and say unto Ahab, prepare thy chariot. Prepare thy chariot and get thee down and go, because it's getting ready to rain. Now, some of you all, you probably understand rain now, because some of you all have been in the tornadoes and the rain, and rain has really been coming. And for us, can you imagine, for 3 years and 6 months, it has not rained, and now all of a sudden you've been told, come on, let's make some moves, let's do some things, because it's about to rain. It's going to rain. It came to pass in the meanwhile that the heavens was black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain. So it wasn't a sprinkle. God was good. God could have said, well, you know, since it ain't rained for 3.5 months, I'm just going to give y'all a little shower, just a little mercy drop. No. I'm going to send the rain. You going to know that I'm God. God always works with those who partner with him. He's not going to leave you hanging. If you do what God tells you and you represent God and you mean to do what you do, God will not leave you hanging. One thing you don't have to be afraid of: if you walk with God and live with God and follow God, God will never leave you hanging. So he said there's a great rain. And it came to pass in the meanwhile that the heavens was black with clouds and wind. So not only did you get the clouds and blocked out the sun, and you got some wind and a great rain. And Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. So that means now Ahab, wherever he was, he had to leave and go to Jezreel. So now, you know, Elijah, I guess he said, I'm going to celebrate. I'm sure this king got his head together now. I'm sure that since I talked to him, let him know wasn't going to be no rain. Been gone for 3.5 years, there wasn't no rain. I'm sure he stood there and watched Mount Carmel and saw what I did, killed the prophets, and saw the hand of the Lord, and the people rallied around. He's the king now. He's got a rallying point. I'm sure now he knows that this is the God, and he needs to go back and start serving the God. But he says, so Ahab, you know, I'm sure Elijah was thinking that, so I want to ride on back. I'm going to meet you on back. So you in the chariot, but that's right. You go ahead. I'm going to get there. I'm on my way. Now, it's raining. It's going to rain. The rain is a great rain. Elijah is out there, and ain't no chariot. There's no bus. There are no shelters along the highway, or the time it says about 24 to 26 miles that Ahab, if you look at your atlas and measure from, you know, where they were to Jezreel or whatever, was about 22 to 24 to 26 miles. And so Ahab is in his chariots on his way. It says, and the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. He ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. Now, some scholars may read it another way. You can read it how you want to. It says Elijah beat Ahab to Jezreel. Elijah gets up his loins, runs a marathon, 24 miles, 23 miles. He beats Ahab in a chariot. He girds up his loins and runs before him into the city of Jezreel. Well, it was like, well, Brinson, no, that ain't what it meant. That meant, it was like he might have been a couple of meters in the rain, and he ran ahead of the horses. No, how could he do that? So how did he get from where Ahab was on his way to Jezreel? They told him to get there before the rain. The rain caught them, but Elijah ran. So that means the anointing of God came upon Elijah. He outran the king's horses, y'all, 22 miles. So now I'm looking at this man. Now, we talked about the prophets of the Lord versus the prophets of Jezebel. We talked about Jezebel's prophets, how they worked, how they carried themselves, what they wore. The text really talks about the prophets of Jezebel were very effeminate men. That's a study all by itself. If you go back and do that study and do the scholarly study, Jezebel's prophets and the prophets of the grove and her 450 prophets were men, but they were effeminate men. Wow. I didn't really know that until I started studying. I was like, wow. And their dress, the 450 prophets, they wore white, long robes with pointed bonnets on their head. That was their dress. Effeminate men with white, long robes with bonnets that was pointed cone shape over their heads. I was like, wow. The only difference to that dress was if you add a mask to that dress and take a mask and tie it to the bonnets, you got the Ku Klux Klan outfit. I was like, wow. There's nothing. Those of you that know the story and have seen the Ku Klux Klan outfit, somebody was telling me about, we were talking about it. They said, well, Brinson, did you? I said, well, no, they didn't have their face covered, but they had the white robe with the pointed bonnet hat, but the bonnet hat with the two eyes and nose and mouth cut out, two eyes and nose cut out, but they had their face covered. Well, the difference between Jezebel's, the robes that Jezebel's prophets had, they had the white robes, flowing robes, all white, but their bonnets were white, tall pointed white hats. Effeminate men in those robes. So there, can you imagine 450 prophets of men effeminate with 400 men effeminate that served the groves, because also the Baal cult was about sexuality as well and temple prostitution. All that's in the Baal cult. I just brought that out because you need to study it more. The prophets of God were more rowdy people, robust, out of the woods, masculine, long beard, dreadlock wearing, rough out-of-door people. Elijah had lived outdoors for a while and lived in the cave. And so now, and also Obadiah then hid 100 of the prophets of the Lord in the cave. So that means you had to be rough to be hiding and living in the cave, and every day you getting bread and water being sent to you, so you lived outdoors. They wasn't living up in the hotel, in the 5-star hotel, saying, I'm a man of God. I'm a man. No, they was in hiding in a cave. Wow, wow, wow. That says a lot for some of you all that have great expectations and you feel like God owes you something because you highly anointed. Well, we'll leave that alone. I just wanted to kind of just break open the ice a little bit because you can do more study. There's more study out there. Thank God for the internet. Thank God for libraries. Thank God for information. And so therefore, there's more information out there that you even want to know about. The question is how do you contextualize the information? But if you Google, you go research what I just said, research Jezebel's prophets, research God's prophets, you will find out what they wore. You probably look extra with biblical material. You'll probably find out what they drank, what they got, and how much they were paid. All of that is out there. It's all out there. So I'm not really trying to start anything. It's out there. You just probably, no one probably never said nothing. Nobody never preached to you. Nobody brought up in the teaching. But I bet you if you go study it, you'll find it. It's out there. So let's move on. So now here it says that Elijah, the rain then came. Elijah then girded himself up and ran ahead with the anointing, outran Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. Now, you would think, let's look at Ahab and the character. You would think that Ahab got his health together by now. You would think that King Ahab is about ready to repent. You would think that King Ahab was like, you know what, we need to live right. I saw the fire. I saw the fire on the altar. He might have killed Jezebel's prophets, but I saw the fire. I saw the presence of God. I saw the presence. I know that I know the rain came because I know that was enough to turn anybody's mind. But you know what? We can be in so much of a situation, circumstances in our lives, so many things we can be in, so many issues we can be living in and living around, that we can see God's handiwork, we can experience his presence, we can know certain things, and in the midst of that, still do what we do and act the way we act. So Ahab, what did he do? It says, chapter 19, and Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done. He go back to Jezebel, his wife, knowing how she is, and tell him everything. I mean, he didn't even wait a while. Maybe I'll wait a week or 2 or 3. What I'm going to say now, because, you know, I wasn't with Jezebel. Jezebel didn't come to the big celebration on Mount Carmel. I couldn't tell her all the details, but now what I'm going to tell Jezebel, because now she don't have no prophets no more. The 450 prophets and the prophets of the groves, the prophets that ate at her table, her staff, and those who maintain all the satellite ministries, all the leaders of that are dead. And Elijah was responsible for killing them. Even though we got the rain, and I saw the power, but I got to go home to this woman. Oh, isn't that something? Wow, what was the relationship? I'm being nosy. I'm trying to be nosy. You know. I wonder what the relationship was. I would give anything to be a fly on the wall. What was it like for Ahab as the king, all excited and seeing what God got? Oh my God, he didn't kill all her prophets. Now he got to go home to the palace and tell his wife, who was the chief prophetess of the cult, that all her prophets and ministers are dead and Elijah killed them. What about the rain? What about people dying of starvation? What about all kinds of diseases? Because, no, promise, I got to go back and tell. How many of you have a spouse, whether it's a male or female, God does a wonder in your life. He does some miracles. You at church or you in the community, you out and about, you out there in the marketplace of life, and God works a miracle. He does some things for you that you know nobody could do it but God. And when you really didn't want to do what you needed to do, he came in anyway because of certain people that you was related to or was happened to be with. And God switched that thing and changed things around and sent the rain. And now you got to remind yourself that your ambiance and what's at your house is altogether different from what God is doing. Now Ahab has to go home now. He's got to go home, come home to mama. He's got to come home now to Jezzy, baby. He has to come home to Jezebel, the one who he lays his head in her bosom, and she does for him and give him whatever he wants when he pout, when it ain't right, based upon the relationships that they already had, knowing she was not right, but allowing her to do certain things. Now, even though he's the king, she could do certain things because she was smart to know how to manipulate, and does, because Elijah had to understand that. That's why he was so upset with Ahab, because Jezebel, it wasn't about Jezebel's lipstick, it wasn't about her perfume, it wasn't about her earrings, it wasn't about her dress, it was about her mind and her spirit, and that she was a woman that dealt with power. She was a strategist. She wasn't no stupid. She was not stupid. First of all, she was the daughter of Edbel, so she was a daddy's girl. She was the daughter of the king, which means she was a princess. And then she was the daughter of the king of the Zidonians, which so happened to be the high priest of the Baal cult, which she was the chief prophetess of a god, Baal. So she's the chief prophetess, working with her daddy in the co-ministry to bring the Baal culture out of Zidon into Israel, and hire her prophets, and had a tie-in as a queen, daughter princess, with her own staff and her prophets. And 850 prophets is dead, and now Ahab got to go home in the middle of the rain. And he told Jezebel all that Elijah had done. With all how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. You know, it's something, you know, funny how, you know, I just was kind of just wondering. I was just wondering. I was wondering, how did Ahab tell Jezebel? Did he have his head down to Maloney? Well, you know what, can I tell you something? I mean, as they said, did he punk out? Was he bold? Was he excited? Was he dreadful? What was his demeanor and personality with Jezebel, his wife, which was a woman that was used to power? Power. Remember, the spirit of Jezebel nowadays is not neither male nor female, really, technically. The spirit of Jezebel is about power, manipulation, control, and strategy. Some of y'all don't even know. Some of y'all need to go get studied. Go study the spirit of Jezebel. Because in our churches, especially in our Pentecostal Sanctified Holiness churches, we got the whole Jezebel thing wrong. Honey, cuz woman coming up in here looking like a Jezebel. Looking like a Jezebel. The story about Jezebel wasn't about nothing about how she looked. It only talked about that Jehu was coming and she painted her face and put her stuff and look out the window. The only thing that said to us that knows something is that if you a queen, you don't go outside in the public without painting your face, without putting your makeup on and combing your hair. So if you was a queen, if you were president, if you were anybody in the public, if you go before the public in public, you take care of your face and you put some clothes on. You put some stuff on if you go in public. That was all. That story about Jehu was about Jezebel going public. She might have been a little sensual in that going public, but it wasn't about that was how we have painted in our chauvinistic attitudes toward women that met women that try to look nice or look over, now however you say, and the women on women. We always talk about the Jezebel looking like Jezebel, outside of talking about the spirit of Jezebel. The spirit of Jezebel is neutered, is neither male nor female. What Jezebel represent in serving other gods, killing the Lord's prophets. She killed the Lord's prophets. She substituted God's men and women for her own purpose. That's the spirit of Jezebel, the spirit of religion that comes in and sells out God's prophets. And so the support of them trusting God to sell out and kill God's prophets and hire and ordain her own prophets that preach and teach like she teaches. Hello, somebody. And then underwrite them with the money. And then it's smart enough to control and turn a whole nation community and switch their worship. That's Jezebel. It's a worship issue. It's a sexuality issue. It's a changing of what God has said and how God has set up the structure for worship and praise in his own sight of who he is, for someone to come in and manipulate, change, and use the power of the pen, the power of the rule, the power of the law, to become the law themselves and take over. That's Jezebel. And Ahab, the king, who was the representation, comes home, because that's what he's married to. Because if he was the king, how can the queen do so much if the king didn't let it go? How could Jezebel reign and rule? And you got a king called Ahab. Well, that's another story, isn't it? So Ahab, he goes home and he tells Jezebel all that Elijah had done, including killing up her prophets, her staff. You see, Jezebel must have been the character, because the king don't sound like to me that the king was too tough on telling her how he told her, or even doing what he had to do. Now let's look at verse 2, having seen that. And then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah. No, Jezebel then get in her chariot, get her people, and go find Elijah. Jezebel then write a letter and invite Elijah to lunch or dinner. Jezebel then invite Elijah to come have a meeting with her to discuss where they go from here. Jezebel sends a messenger. Now, you know, when you got something to say, you say it yourself. But you got some folk that know how to say what they got to say and fix it. She sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, so let the gods, small G-O-D, anytime in the Bible you see a small G-O-D, those are false gods. So let the gods do to me. The same God that Elijah the other day before the rain proved couldn't talk. Talk to your God. Call on them. And they call them. They cut themselves. Oh, Baal, hear us. Oh, Baal, hear us. Baal, send the rain. Oh, the same one of the same gods that evidently couldn't hear, didn't hear. She's saying, so the gods do to her. So now they can move now. They can act. They can do something. So the gods do to me and more also. Not only do they do to me, but they just do to me and more. If I make not thy life as one of the life of them by tomorrow about this time. You killed up my prophet. Wait a minute, you 400 prophets, you killed them? Well, excuse me. He didn't write no letter either. He sent a message. She sent a message. Go tell Elijah that so do the gods do to me, and more also, if I don't make him like this tomorrow, not in 2 days from now, not 3 days from now, tomorrow. You mine, man of God, tomorrow. Tomorrow, your life is going to be like that. Now, this is the man of God. This is the man of God. Wait a minute. This is the man of God. Let's go back now. This is the man of God. This is the man of God. How are you going to talk to the man of God like that? He just brought the fire down. All of Israel is on his side. I mean, you know, all the Israel's on his side. They didn't have no rain for 3 years and 6 months. You know, so I'm sure the man of God, you ain't got no clout. You know, people forgot that quick. So what was, let's look at it. I mean, you know, but it would seem to me that the people of Israel should be still on the high because the rain came and rained down. They saw the fire. They say the Lord, he is God. It seemed like to me, and if he was able to kill the 450 prophets and the 8 other 400, he should have went on down there and took Jezebel and killed her at the same time while he was killing everybody. But due all respect, he was respecting the leader, I guess. Whatever. So, you know, what happens? I guess what we need, let's go ahead and read this before I make my point. And when he saw that, he arose and went for his life and came to Beersheba, which belonged to Judah, and left his servant there. So now, remember, we talked about the kingdom being split between Judah and Israel. We talked about that the people of Judah was where Jerusalem was. Judah was where they worshiped God, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Israel, the king before, had cut off the prophets of the Lord, had not cut them off, but forbid them to practice. They had built 2 places in Israel for them to go and worship. But in a lot of the prophets of the Lord during the time that Judah and Israel split, Benjamin went with Judah and the whole tribe of Levi went with Judah. And so the Levites that was in different places of Israel began to defect and move over into Judah's territory. So Elijah got up and said, I'm getting up out of here. I'm getting up out of Egypt. I'm getting up out of Israel. I got to go to Judah. I got to get to Judah. That's where God's presence is. I got to go to Judah. That's where his house is. I got to go to Judah. That's where the prophets of the Lord is. Well, you was in Israel trying to make a point, wanting God to use you in a miraculous way. You've been to Brook Cherith. You saw what God did there, fed you. Then you went to Zarephath. What you do, have enough power to raise a son, to raise somebody to life. Now you're on Mount Carmel. You had the power to bring the water, the fire to lick up the water. Everything that was waterlogged, it got dried up. And God used you to from the brook to the mountain and everything. So what happens? What happens, y'all, when you come down off the mountain and you just know God worked a miracle in your life? And the miracles of people around you, and you speaking in tongues, Shando, Yelebe, Ha, Shata, Hey! God done a work. Yes, he done. And you coming on down the mountain, praising the Lord, coming on down the mountain. When she come, Jezebel, when she come, you forgot all about that mountain. Boy, this man of God, he got up. He said, I got to get up out of here. She gonna get, I'm gone. In fact, forget Israel. I'm going to Judah. He got up. And not only that, my servant, I got to go to talk to the Lord. In fact, I'm tired. I don't even want to live. You know what? My prayer partner, my servant, let's get up out of here. I'm going to leave you in Judah because I got to go seek the Lord in the wilderness. So he got up and he went. And then he left his servant in Beersheba in Judah, which belongs to Judah. I could go off on that because Judah means praise. But I was wondering, in the state Elijah was in, he gets into the coast of Judah, which means praise. But yet at the same time, he lets go his armor bearer and his support system. And he says, even though I'm in the town of Judah, which means praise, I got to go into the wilderness of praise because I need to be alone with God. And he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, nothing out there, and came and sat down under a juniper tree. So he goes a day's journey into the wilderness. So that means, he was one of them rugged men. He had tendencies to live outdoors because he lived outdoors by the brook Cherith. So now he's back outdoors again. He was living in the loft, and I'm sure he had been over there with Ahab. Now he back out in the wilderness. In his comfort zone, he went into the wilderness. Nothing is in the wilderness. And came and sat down under a juniper tree, and he requested for himself that he might die, and said, it is enough now. It's enough now, O God, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers. He asked God to take away, mental illness. In the mental life, they call that suicide ideation. The prophet, the man of God, has suicide ideation. How many of us, because of situations and circumstances in our life, we've got to a point where it ain't worth it no more? You know how many ministers kill themselves? You know how many ministers and leaders commit suicide? You know how many believers commit suicide? Where is it in our minds where we get to the point in our spirit and our soul and our bodies that we have said, in all my journey, I have become weary and I'm tired and I'm through? Paul could have said that. But I believe there's a biblical text that said, be not weary in well-doing, for in due season you shall reap if you faint not. Only because that text was necessary, because even in the Old Testament, even Jesus said, hey, let this cup, do this cup now. I know I came to do what I need to do, but Father, now I think about it, the whip, the beating, and now stuff I got to go through. People are crazy. Let this cup pass from me if I can I? So you can say what you want to say. But there's certain times in life and situations that beat up on us and come our way, and we're not strong. We find ourselves rearing and rocking from the challenges of people and places and things and situations and circumstances that come on us to challenge who we are, the essence of what we believe in. I am jealous for your sake. I have been doing all I know how to do, and this woman in threatened my life. It's enough. I'm tired. Take away my life. Why, Elijah? Because I'm not better than my fathers. Also, you was competing. So you feel less than. Low self-esteem. The self-esteem issue is in this text. Our time is winding down. I know I ain't gonna have time to get into it, but in our next broadcast, we're gonna talk about suicide ideation, men and women of God, and suicide ideation, low self-esteem, and depression. Yes. While on the journey, while working for God, while committed to his service, the fire has failed. The anointing is hot. You've even done this. God and took care of you. You got a testimony. But the day later, it's a different story. Something happened. Somebody said something. Some situation occurred. And now you are in another situation. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, came and sat down under a juniper tree, and requested for himself that he might die, and said, it is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers. And as he lay and slept under a juniper tree, behold, then an angel touched him and said unto him, arise and eat. Now we're going to stop right there, but he slept. his mind was messed up. He went into the wilderness, away from everybody, left his armor bare, sat under a juniper tree, had a little talk with Jesus, told him all about his troubles, but told him what he wanted God to do about his troubles, take away his life. It ain't enough. It's enough. I'm through. I'm finished. It's enough. I have determined. Can't do this no more. I resign. Can't do it no more. I'm out. And you got depressed, and now you're going to sleep. Well, until next time, go ahead of me and study the book. Remember that in the midst of all of that, God is still on the throne. And so until next time, be thou blessed.